Welcome back to the Tamarack Sew Along. Today is day 8 and the day that we're inserting our welt pockets. This is something that the internet has deemed scary, but taken one step at a time, it's completely manageable and not hard at all. That said, if you're nervous, it never hurts to insert a practice welt on a scrap of your quilt sandwich. If you're skipping the welt pockets, you've got today off. We'll be assembling and attaching the patch pockets in our next lesson. If you're Team Welt, then let's get started. We now need to prep our welts. We're going to apply our fusible interfacing to the wrong side of the pocket welt pieces, and you're going to use the instructions that were included with your fusible because fusibles vary and you want to do what works best for yours. So head over to your iron and we'll fuse these together. I like to give mine a press just to make sure they're nice and flat. And lay your interfacing over top with the bumpy side facing down. The bumpy side is the glue, so you're going to want that towards the wrong side of your fabric. Now cover that with a press cloth to protect your iron. And then I like to hold down without steam for about 20-ish seconds. You don't want to go back and forth, you just want to hold down and give it some static pressure because you don't want that interfacing shifting around. And I am pressing down on my iron. This is a very lightweight iron. It's very hot, but I just want to make sure it gets enough pressure to really adhere. All right, now you can see we are fully fused. All right, now we're going to fold our pocket welts in half along the notched fold line and pin. Then head over to the machine and we're going to sew along the short ends here at 1/2 inch. All right, so again, 1/2 inch. I am back tacking. And then the other side. Now we're going to need to grade and clip the sides of our welt. So I clip off the corner and grade one of the seam allowances by cutting it in half. Again, clip the corner and cut one of the seam allowances in half. Now we're going to turn our welt right side out. And then just head over to your iron and give it a nice press. The last step in assembling your welt is to just stitch the 2 layers closed, and I'll be doing that at 1/4 inch. Now we need to prep our welt placement area. You can see here I have a little fake bottom of my jacket so you can more easily see how I insert the pocket. It's a lot easier to see on the light colors than the pattern that I've chosen for my jacket. You can see here I have my 2 pocket placement markings, and I'm just going to draw in the line between them so you can see it. On your jacket, you can draw this in chalk if you like. It can be helpful when basting to have that line marked. Now what we need to do is we need to baste a line of stitching 1/4 inch above and 1/4 inch below the pocket placement line. And I'm going to use a contrasting thread to do this. So if this was my real fabric, I would be using chalk, but again, I'll be using pencil so you can see it. So I'm just going to mark in that line above and below. And you're going to want these lines to extend beyond the pocket placement points. And that's just so that we can make sure we have a nice sharp square. In the instructions, I have you do 3/4 of an inch. This is probably a little more, but at least 3/4 of an inch. And then you're also going to need to mark a line straight through the end of the pocket, which is the pocket placement point. And then one more over on the other side. Now we're going to baste through here. I'm going to use my quilt basting needle again. And my thread, you'll want to just do a single line of thread. I'm doing a double just so it's a little darker so you can see it. And then you're just going to start stitching, basting through your placement lines. And if this was not a quilted jacket, I would say you can go ahead and just trace your lines in, no big deal. But the reason we want to baste these is because, again, we have 3 layers of fabric. And this is a little bit of a precision task, putting in a welt pocket. So we want to make sure that nothing moves between the top and center layers. Clip that and then continue with the rest of the lines. Now we need to take our welt and align it with our pocket. So here we're going to align the raw edge of the welt with the pocket placement markings. And this line that you stitched to close all the layers together will align with your basted line. So then you're going to baste that in place. And this is a lot of layers to hand stitch through, so you can definitely do this by machine if you prefer. All right, I am going to machine baste this so you can have an idea of what that looks like. I have my stitch length set to 4.5, and I'm just going to stitch right across that line I already stitched. you don't want to back tack it either side. There you can see our welt is basted on. Now we need to attach our top pocket bag. So we're going to lay that out with the wrong side of the pocket bag facing the right side of the jacket. And you're going to match your 2 pocket placement points with the ones on your jacket. Then we're going to just pin that in place. And I like to just put a pin or 2 up top here. That way the pocket doesn't move down or squish around while you're stitching. Now what we're going to do is we're going to flip our jacket over so the wrong side or the inside is facing up. We're going to go over to our machine and we're going to stitch around this square that we made. So I'll show you that now. All right, now for our stitching here, I like to start in the center of one of the long sides of the rectangle. Make sure you've returned your stitch length back to normal if you basted your welt on. And then we're just going to stitch following the line we basted. And this is why it's nice to baste, because you can also see it through both sides. When I get to my pins, I'm going to take those out. And then really important at the corners, you're going to want to make sure that you've really hit that corner. So I'm like about a half a stitch away from the corner here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand wheel. That's too far. So I'm just going to slide my fabric until I hit the exact corner, then pivot. Same thing, pivot into the corner. That one miraculously does hit. And you're going to stitch back across. Into the other corner. Pivot, stitch down, that one hits perfectly, and stitch back to where you started. You're going to back tack and then clip your threads. All right, so we now have our box stitched in on the back and the front. The next part is the scary part. The part where we cut a hole in our jackets. So I'm going to just keep this pinned up for now so I don't clip my pocket or anything. The way that I find is easiest is to fold your jacket in half and then just slice a little hole into there. And with your shears, you're going to continue cutting across until you're about a ½ inch from the side. And then continue on the other side as well. And you're cutting through all layers. So now we need to take care of the corners. So I like to start by taking a small scissor. And then you're going to want to cut into the corners. Now you want to get to, but not through the corners. If you cut too far, it's going to be very hard to repair that. But if you don't cut far enough, it's not a big deal. We can just do that in our next step. Not cutting far enough will create a small pucker. And I'm doing this one layer at a time. I just find that easiest. And you can flip it over to make sure you've got that side clipped. Sometimes it is easier to cut from this side because your welt isn't in the way. And then I'm going to cut the pocket the same way. And here you can see we have cut open our pocket and we have these little points at each end. Now we need to flip our pocket and welt to the inside of our jacket. So to start, just like to give a few things a pre-press. Makes it a little easier for me to turn. Then you're just going to fold everything through the hole you cut. And your welt is going to stay on the front because that's on the outside of your jacket. And you're just going to start pressing it open. So you can see here on this side, I have a nice corner. If I give that a press, everything lays really nice. There's not puckering, but on this side, it doesn't want to turn. There's a lot of puckering. So what that means is we didn't cut far enough into our corners. So I'm just going to pop everything back through, go back, and just clip a tiny bit more. So that's what I was saying about if you cut too far, you've sort of ruined your welt, but if you don't cut far enough, you can always fix it. All right, and now you can see that is nice and flat. And then again, the top edge we're going to press right along that seam line. Don't burn yourself. And there we go. Now what we need to do is stitch across the pocket right here just to anchor the jacket to the top pocket bag. And this will be covered by the welt, so don't really worry about it being perfect. I'm just going to pin my welt out of the way so I don't catch it. And then I am going to just put 2 pins in there just to keep everything flat because we're going to be stitching from the front. So head over to your machine and we'll stitch that now. So here we have our welt out of the way. I'm just going to stitch across. And now we have our stitch line. It's also a great time to take out our basting. All right, now flip your jacket over so the wrong side is facing up. And we're going to align our lower pocket bag. So you're going to want the right side facing up of the lower pocket bag. And what's going to happen is this is going to fold down and then the top pocket bag will fold over top. So this way you'll have the right side of both of your lining fabrics facing out and it'll blend in with your jacket back. So just lay that out there. And we're going to pin it in place. And again, it's just aligning with your top pocket bag. Now what we're going to do we're just going to pin that in place, making sure everything is aligned. Oh, my pin's a little dull. Now to attach the bottom pocket bag, what we're going to do is fold this top edge under to reveal our clipped jacket, and we're going to stitch a line right in this ditch where our previous square was stitched. Now that we're at our machine, we're going to just start right here where our angle meets the corner of our pocket opening. We're going to stitch right across along that square that we had previously stitched from one side to the other. Make sure I'm on the line. You can see I'm right on the edge. You can see I'm right on the edge, but I haven't caught the jacket. Now head back over to your ironing board. We're going to press the bottom pocket bag down. Here you can see the line we stitched. Our next step is to fold the top pocket bag down over top of the bottom pocket bag and press along the top. Pin around the edges to anchor the two pockets together, or the two pocket bags. Then we're going to go to our machine and we're going to stitch around this using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And we have probably 3/4 of an inch, so you're going to be a 1/2 inch away from your pocket area. Now to sew around the pocket, I like to start with the right side facing up, and then I fold my jacket out of the way. And I don't want to run over my little triangle here. I'm also going to just flip that up out of the way. 1/2 inch seam allowance. Oops, sorry. Just to fold the other side out of the way. And continue sewing to the end. Now our pocket is looking pretty good from the front and the back. There's one last step that we need to do. These triangles here, we need to pull on them so that the side is nice and straight. Don't pull too hard so it's bowed out, just so the edge of the rectangle that you originally stitched is very straight. And we're going to stitch through the triangle and the pocket right here along our previous triangle stitching line to anchor the pocket sides in place. So for this one again, you want to get right next to the fold, but you don't want to sew through your jacket, which is and if you do sew through your jacket, no big deal. Just stop and take it out and redo it. And here you can see on the front, that is nice and anchored. You can't get into the side of your pocket. It aligns really nicely with the welt. And then we need to do that for the other side. So again, fold your jacket down, give a tiny tug on the triangle. You're going to stitch right across the previous stitching line, not through the jacket. I like to hand wheel my first stitch so I know I'm in the right spot. Back tack, because this is a stress point. And clip your threads. All right, so we now have a pretty nice looking welt. Our welt hits the corners. You won't have pencil all over yours, so it'll look even better than mine. And our pocket is in the back, the right side's facing out. At this point, you're going to want to finish the edges of your pocket. You can do that with bias binding, a zigzag stitch, serging, whatever you prefer. It's completely up to you. Now we just have 2 more steps and then our pockets are done. The first one is that we need to anchor the edge of your welt to the sides. Now you'll notice this welt is not a typical welt. Usually they stop at the top of the opening. Our welt for the Tamarack is taller because a lot of times you put a lot of stress on this and your fabric will kind of start to sag as you repeatedly use your pocket. This way the edge of the pocket is always over this line. You don't have a messy looking pocket from use. But that does mean we need to hand stitch the sides of the welt to our jacket. So I have a length of thread with a knot in the end. And I'm going to come in through the bottom. I'm just going to slip stitch my pocket welt and the side of my jacket together. I'm using kind of a bad quality muslin for the top, so it's not the best looking fabric. my last stitch. I'm going to anchor that on the back. And this should fall underneath the top here, so it'll be hidden. You're going to then repeat that for the other side so it's anchored in place. The final thing you can do, and this is completely optional, is there's some not beautiful guts under here. They're not that gnarly, but a lot of people have asked about this. And you can easily just slip stitch the pocket top to the inner layer of your jacket to anchor that in place. That is no big deal. Very easy to do. In fact, you can also stitch around the entire pocket if you don't want that to flap around or anything. That's no problem either. Just completely up to you. So you'll just stitch your way across the top. Until the entire thing is anchored. All right, and that is it for inserting your welt pocket. You now have a nice, beautiful welt, and if you're nervous, you can easily make a little tiny test piece like this. All I did was cut across the waistline. So, next up, we'll be putting our patch pockets in. We have to assemble, quilt, and apply those. So we'll be doing that next time. In the meantime, if you have any questions, you can let me know in the comments below. And make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our video updates. I'll see you back here next time. Bye-bye.